guys, it's Jouelzy, and today with me I have my line sister,
Natalie.
And we're going to do a continuation of a video that I did almost 2 years ago with Evelyn from the internet about African Americans and Africans in America. That video started a large conversation. And when I did the video with Evelyn, I got so many comments about, well, what about do we call y'all West Indian or Caribbean? Like,
Fine with both.
The political correctness of saying Caribbean. West Indian, that's kind of what it's termed in New York. So for the sake of this, I do understand if you don't prefer the term because Christopher Columbus did not land in India. So today we're going to do a video about African Americans and West Indians or Caribbean people in America. So Natalie, if you want to explain how you self-identify and where your family's from.
Okay, my family's from Haiti. I was born here in America. However, when someone asks me what do I self-identify with, I like to think of it as twofold. So I always ask back, well, what do you mean, my ethnicity, or are you talking about my race? So if it's regards to ethnicity, then I identify with Haitian American or Caribbean American.
All right.
If someone's asking me what my race is, I'm Black. So that's pretty much how I look at it.
Okay, and I think it's important for us to preface as we have this conversation because a lot of people have really personal feelings about it. Neither of our cultural identities are monolithic. So while I identify as African American and she identifies as Haitian American, we are not speaking for the whole, but we are speaking from our own personal perspectives.
Right, I'm absolutely not speaking for the whole.
But have you been to Haiti since you've been born in America?
No, I've never been to Haiti. The political atmosphere in Haiti was just so, say, unstable or, in so much turbulence that I guess it just would have been safer to stay at home.
So do you feel like that at all changes your cultural identity?
I fully claim Haiti as the origin of much of my culture. I fully identify as Haitian American because I do think there's a difference between being Haitian and Haitian American. Growing up, I grew up in Flatbush and
Brooklyn.
Flatbush, Brooklyn in New York. And as much as someone can say, oh well, that's like being in the Caribbean, or as much as someone could say you have access to, let's say, some foods or the cultural experience, it's not Haiti.
Access to the American privilege.
Right.
From what I know of you, it still seems like you had a pretty Haitian upbringing.
I would say so.
Your community was pretty insulated,
yes,
even within Brooklyn. So because you speak the language.
It's Haitian Creole. But I'm pretty sure if you go to Haiti, they're not saying it's Haitian Creole.
Okay. Well, I think in America you have to identify because there's so many other communities that have a sort of Creole language. Right. So what was your first language?
I'm pretty sure my first language was Haitian Creole. I mean, my father speaks some English. His English is okay.
Yeah.
It's not his strongest language to speak. My mother, same. She's not really strong in speaking English either. And my parents raised me. I had older brothers who spoke English, but in the household, if you wanted to communicate with your parents, you spoke the language of your parents. And
how has your family assimilated to American culture, or have they not?
This kind of goes back to living in an insulated community where I'm not quite sure where American culture ends or begins when it comes to what's going on in my household. Like, I know what's definitively Haitian, and I somewhat know what's definitively American, but I don't really know what's going on in the middle. I know from what my parents have told me, you don't cook turkeys on Thanksgiving. I can't tell you all the ways in which my family's assimilating.
What are your relations, and then what are your family relations with African Americans?
Funny, when I was growing up and living within that insulated Caribbean community, right? Where your neighbor was from somewhere, and that somewhere wasn't Tennessee or, anywhere in the South. Your neighbor was from somewhere in the Caribbean or in South America. Kind of had this ignorant view. Like, I knew that there was a civil rights movement. I knew that there were, people of color who, had roots set in here through slavery here in America, but where were they? I didn't know where they were.
They were in Brooklyn with you. I also think on some levels that the Black community in New York gets, it's not really fun to say you're African American, right? Historically, we haven't been as culturally proud as maybe some other cultures. Okay, so the West Indian Day Parade is way more poppin' than the African American Day Parade in Harlem.
It is way more
like substantially so, right?
Yes.
Substantially so that a lot of African Americans will pick a country and identify as that, right? Like, I could tell you I'm Trinidadian, I'm from St. Anne's, like, what's good? As Like, it's
Well,
kind of interesting that you could grow up in Brooklyn and not really deal with African Americans here. It wasn't
the
like
population
a purposeful
at
thing.
my high school had African Americans. Just who were they? I mean, I don't. And it probably goes back to what you're saying about pride. It's not like they were waving around an American flag. And
I think that's what happens a lot here. People
what's
just
the instance
aren't,
for that? When do you wave around an American flag?
You don't, and because a lot of us don't even feel American, and so it's like. That's kind of like when people start commenting on my videos and they're like, oh, well, I'm Bayesian and so I'm, we don't act like African Americans. And it always comes back to like, I'm differentiating each other, not based on cultural differences, but based on less than differences. And it's like, well, how do you know that person is what you thought they are?
To college, this is when I started meeting all these different people and saying, oh, where have you been hiding? Because I went to college up in Harlem. And so when I'm up there and I'm meeting like the African Americans in Harlem,
because I think there's a stronger cultural pride about being African American in Harlem because of how much, even though Bed-Stuy is historically a black community, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the you have Abyssinian Church, you have a lot more kind of like the Harlem Renaissance. There's my mom's side of the family is from Harlem, but then a lot of them are from Brooklyn, and the Harlem people are a lot more kind of like very strong in their identity as African American.
Okay.
Versus Brooklyn is like I'm Brooklyn before I'm anything else. I look at my friends that I made in New York. I could tell most everyone who's West Indian or African, like where they're from. And then I can't tell you who my African American friends are for sure.
Okay.
And because it just doesn't come up, it's not a thing that comes up in conversation unless someone's telling you, oh, I'm from South Carolina. Like they're from, all my friends that are from New York, born and raised. Like I had a homeboy who for the longest time I thought he was Trinidadian. And was there ever tension in your relationships as a Haitian American with other African Americans?
No, I didn't grow up with them. I didn't meet them until I got to like college. And if I knew them in high school, I didn't know that's what they were. I didn't know.
Growing up in New York, have you felt that people assume that you're African American?
Yes. Every time I stopped seeing anyone of my race, it was that I was African American. Like there was no other identity beyond that.
So I'm not sure how your parents feel about African American.
And I'm not saying this about my parents specifically, but other Haitians I've spoken to, other Haitian Americans I've spoken to, other Caribbean Americans that I've spoken to. In conversation, I'm going to admit, on my end at least, that I always had this impression we're a little better.
How are y'all better though? Like,
I mean, I'm on a schoolyard, running around, losing my mind like kids do. Do something wrong, I'm expecting some kind of punishment, and it's going to be severe.
From your parents.
From my parents.
So I don't think the African American kid is gonna get punished.
But then there's some kind of impression I've always gotten from statements made around me that no, they get grounded or something. They
don't get spanked essentially.
They don't get the right type of.
The one thing I will give, the chores thing.
And
that was a cultural difference. I don't think they woke
up at 4:35.
Absolutely not. I never did. No, and I did not have a wicker broom. They had to bend over the.
I didn't have those either.
Sean, my homeboy Sean, whose parents are Trinidadian, was the best at sweeping floors. He would wake up every Saturday morning and sweep the whole house. I noticed, culturally speaking, that there was a different way of approaching chores.
Growing up, it was always, we're into our studies and we're really focused and adult. I can think to myself, no, there were a lot of Caribbean American people that I grew up with who didn't do shit. They didn't do any work, So
how do you relate to us now?
Well, I still think that I'm different. I think I have a different culture. I have a different language, different music, different art, different history, different things to be angry about and things to celebrate. But I do think that there is some commonality. If we walk down the street together next to each other, and this is something I also heard in the first video you had, but if we walk down the street next to each other, we're both black. We're both black, and we both have the same American experience here. We're both
being impressed by the same system.
Still kind of battle some of the same themes within our communities, and so that's where I can say I can relate to you. Because if I had a conversation with you about hair textures and what our history with hair textures and our views on hair texture is, we can probably talk for a while.
Yeah.
Where
colorism works the same way. You guys we have a Creole community.
Right.
You guys obviously have a Creole ruling community. So I asked Natalie specifically, obviously she's my line sister, but so I asked you because you're Haitian, and one of the first things when I came to New York was learning about kind of like why Haiti's at the back of the parade, right? Why they get the last float, or kind of the own ethnocentrism that even exists in the community. And I think for West Indians it's different because you guys are all separate islands. You know, you are separate countries. You are separated by water, right? You weren't all colonized by the same country.
Right.
So there's a lot more room for more distinct cultural differences. Even though there is sort of this kind of community, I think there is some unity around the concept of being an islander, though. But there is a good bit of derision that I wasn't aware of until I came to New York. I think sometimes in the conversation about Caribbeans, Haiti definitely gets left out a lot.
Okay.
I think you guys get dogged out a lot. And I think there's a lot, you have probably one of the communities that gets the most negative representation. Like when we're talking about stereotypes, like how are people, you know, like a lot of people comment on my videos about being teased, and that's why they keep themselves separate from African Americans, because they got teased by, and I almost feel like, well, maybe you didn't have this big issue with African Americans because you were trying to get through the other West Indians first.
In the 90s, definitely experienced that. I have family members, friends who did get teased, who got jumped or beat up. You know, I was always in a place where there was a strong Haitian community, but I don't think at that time the Haitian voice within that community was really protecting me either. A friend of mine who has a story about getting jumped on their birthday, just coming home drenched in blood, and this is a matter of people found out he was Haitian. One thing I do remember battling with a lot, people always had jokes about voodoo and witchcraft and all these things that I had no exposure to at all. And so when someone's pointing at me telling me that I practice some kind of witchcraft, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? I go to the same church you do. Like when I see us portrayed in the media, it's just like that movie. It's like some dirty people who speak some like some language. Like I'm listening to these Haitians on Bad Boys, and I'm just like, that's not even Creole. Like, what are you speaking right now?
Interesting to see people kind of rep being Miami Haitian and then rep being Zoe.
Okay.
Which is the gang out of that community down there, right? So it's like, okay, if we're combating kind of this negative portrayal, why then attach yourself to something that kind of factually is a negative? But then the hip hop, I think that also has influence, because like Rick Ross, who's not even Haitian, stay shouting out Zoe Gang. So does Lil Wayne. And you're like, okay.
I think the term Zoe has become synonymous with just saying that you're Haitian. That I rep being Haitian. I have like this like radical pride in being Haitian. And so when people are like, oh yeah, to all my Zoes out there, you know, it's like saying no. Like we understand that this is like some kind of radical mindset, and that you at this point it's just like you're just straight up showing some pride in that.
And if you go back to like West Africa, like people from Togo constantly get like overlooked in the conversation. Like, you know, like English speaking countries within the same sphere always seem to turn their nose up at the more French influenced countries.
And I can really only speak from my experience as a Haitian American. I think much of that conversation has a lot to do with what happened after Haiti got its independence, or what
France made y'all pay them back, so y'all never got out of debt.
But then there's more than that. There was all this propaganda, and there was all this like silencing of the revolution. There was this whole like, oh well, let's not let any of these other colonies or places with slavery going on. Let's not let them know that this happened, because then they're gonna get inspired to revolt as well. So there was a silencing. There was all this entire smear campaign, right?
Okay.
And you have presidents of nations calling Haitian people cannibals and saying that they did all these nasty, barbaric things, and people start to believe that. And so if you've had these strong, powerful nations pulling apart your culture, putting out on TV that you practice some kind of witchcraft that, is all like this negative witchcraft that you're practicing, they've been portraying you in a particular filthy, disgusting way, and then they've just been starving you, then what's there to, you're looking at a group of people and you're thinking, well, the reason they can't come up is because they don't want to. If you don't have the context to say, oh, okay, I can see what's happening, and I can sympathize, and and I can understand. If you don't have that context and don't have that education, then you're just gonna go with the ignorant views, and I
think that's very true of every culture, and we always tend to look that over. Some people just don't want to do better. You don't want to be woke. It's hard to kind of constantly be conscious of the world around you. I think people get teased on all sides of the diaspora, and it's always kind of from the community of ignorance.
It's understandable because mob mentality runs everything, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone to some extent is a conformist. You can say you're as individual as you want to be. At some point in your life, you're a conformist, right? Where you heard some popular opinion and it framed the way you view things. You created some kind of bias.
Right.
And so I I think that's kind of where a lot of the negative energy, or why people are left, out of the conversation. It's conforming to what some popular views might be, So when I think about growing up, and I think, okay, I specifically remember this kid in my first or second grade class who I knew was Haitian. Like, I knew this kid is Haitian. Like, I knew they were Haitian. I saw their mother at parent-teacher conferences, and hearing this kid say, I'm not Haitian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know what people were telling him at the time, Maybe I was totally ignorant to what was going on in the setting, but maybe people were like, oh, you Haitian, or maybe you're Haitian booty scratcher, or some stupidness.
Did everyone not American get called a booty scratcher?
I don't know, but I heard Haitian booty scratcher more than I ever needed to in my life.
I think that is like the dig of the African diaspora, that we're all
I would like to meet the person who first thought,
like, who came up with that.
What's one way to defame a group of people?
I have to research the etymology. That's like really a thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna look it up. Maybe it's a Wikipedia page on it. Who knows? Do you think Haitian culture has influenced any part of American culture or African American culture, or the African diaspora at large? But I'm trying to think about what about Haitian culture am I familiar with? I've had soup jamu. Is that no? I've had it. You didn't bring me none. No, you did bring me some.
Did I?
You did. I feel like you and Jerry. I basically have had Haitian food. I've had griot, which I love.
I love the accent that you use when you say these things.
I said griot. What accent am I using?
It's all good.
I think a judgmental Virgo. It's okay though.
My culture is different. There's this bilingualism that, I've had to face, and not that other cultures don't experience to some degree, but I think, their ability to access English words might have been a little easier, right? Whereas for me, every time my parents need to speak to someone, I needed to translate. I need to be there, or sitting down and battling with bilingualism on my own. If I'm having a conversation with someone,
accents way better than I do.
Whose accent?
I don't understand anybody's accent.
I mean, well, I grew up in Flatbush, so for the most part, when I'm communicating with people, for a long time I was insecure about speaking out to people because I felt like I would use the wrong words. People always tried to correct me when I used the wrong.
I do remember you online. No comments. How do you feel about relations with Dominicans in New York? Have y'all crossed paths?
Yeah. When I was younger, there were a few scatters of people of
because they're more in the Bronx. They're not really in Brooklyn.
There were scatters of them of Hispanic descent. Where specifically, I have no idea where they were from, to be honest. But when I got older and I started venturing off uptown
and
into Harlem and the Bronx, I started really disliking the conversations I would have with people.
You had beef because you're Haitian and they're Dominican.
No, I never actually had that beef, and I would say that the Dominican people that I'm cool with now, that I have friendships with now, when they think about the relationships, they think it's a pretty fucked up deal. I don't think that they subscribe to
I haven't met any Dominicans in the States who agree with what's happening currently.
Right, and I have met a few who I think they're just a product of some ignorance that they're exposed to.
Yeah.
Where like they'll say, I don't agree with this, but then they'll make certain statements. Oh, I have to think to myself, is it worth checking them right here at this moment, or should I find another way to check them? You know? And so I've had that experience, but no actual animosity where there was like strong beef. In Brooklyn, however, a few times my mom has come head to head with a few people who were not necessarily Dominican,
but they were Hispanic.
Yeah, and the statements on both ends just didn't seem the most appropriate.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Natalie, for joining me in this conversation. Do you have any last? I love making everyone I know uncomfortable on camera.
She sure does.
They're all gun shy. So if you can relate at all to Natalie's experience and identity as Black in America, as a first generation Haitian American in the country, leave your comments in the comments down below. Leave your thoughts, yes, those, in the comments down below and join the conversation. I think it's great to remember that Black in America is ever evolving, that we are all in some ways interconnected yet unique in our own cultural rights, but no one is greater than the other. And we can all just get along. Natalie and I get along great.
We do, sometimes.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, yes.
Since 2009. All right, thanks for watching. Yeah. Deuces.